wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, and peace be unto all of you. Today and the following series, I'm going to present a new series to you under the name of Two Options. As it sounds to me and to many of you, it sounds very interesting, and I hope we take it and we benefit from it ourselves first, and then we teach it to others so that they would benefit as well. As we know that, as Muslims, we know that this life that we live in has series of tests. We pass one test to go to another test, to a third test, to a fourth test. It never ends. We can get in one day many tests. We can get in, yes, all the time we confront tests, situations that have options, that have at least two options. And we Muslims, when we confront these options, we all the time select one option. We never select the other option. As multiple choices usually contain, the minimum is two options and the maximum is endless. It can be 3 options, 5 options, 20 options, regardless of the number of options. We Muslims see all these number of options as if they are only 2 options. Option number 1, which is a divine option, and option number 2, which is a non-divine option, which may have within it 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 options or more than this, depending. However, we classify all these options here as option number 2, which is non-divine, and the other one is the divine option. First of all, let me remind you of one beautiful aspect of this great religion, Islam, among the millions of beautiful aspects that we have in this religion. It is the freedom of choice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said all the time in the Quran, we have this freedom and there is great focus on it. In religion, we have freedom of religion, freedom to select anything to believe in it. And the Quran says, لا إكراه في الدين. There is no compulsion in religion. So you have the option all the time to select this or this. And based on this, we decide which options. We Muslims, as we will learn from the prophets of Allah and the messengers of Allah, and from other Muslims like us who selected to be Muslims, and they signed the contract with Almighty Allah by saying, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. We all the time have these options. I'll give you one example today. The example of the son of Nuh, the son of Prophet Noah. And you will notice that I will mention the names in Arabic and in English so that you will benefit from these names in Arabic. So when you encounter these names in the Quran, you will be able, it will make it easy for you to remember how to pronounce them. So the son of Noah was in this situation. He had these 2 options. Option number 1, which is here, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded his father to build an ark and to take his followers in this ark and to take the animals and the species, other species that were living at that time with him in this huge ark. This is option number 1. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded him, he commanded him, yes, to take his followers. Then the father asked his son, Ya bunayyar kam ma'ana. Oh, my beloved son, come with us, come and ride with us, come to be in the ark or on the ark, because the flood will come and will cover everything and there will be no place to go at that time. So come with us. Here, the son of Noah is confronting these 2 options. One option is option number 1, whether to follow his father's command, and the essence of his father's command is to obey Almighty Allah, because the command that was given to him by his father Noah is a command from Almighty Allah. So this is option number one for him. And at the same time, he has another option. Of course, he has option number two, where he has the opportunity to disobey his father based on whatever reason, whatever excuse, and whatever justification. The son of Nuh selected option number two. He used his mind, but unfortunately he used it incorrectly. He used his mind incorrectly, and he said, yes, if the rain comes, and if it covers, and if the flood covers the whole planet, and I will go to that mountain, to climb that mountain, so that the flood will not reach. So the mountain will protect me. Then his father, the Prophet of Allah, reminded him that at that time there will be no protector. Nothing can protect you. You cannot go to anywhere that will protect you. However, the child selected that option, the other option, option number two, which is purely a human option based on his intelligence, based on his experience, his personal experience, and the collective experience of the humans at that time, proved that there was no rain that happened that could made a flood, and this flood covered the whole earth, even the mountains. So the son here used his own intellect, but incorrectly, because this is the problem of the unbelievers. They think that the amount of education that they have, or the amount of experience they have, whether it's individual experience or collective experience, they think that this is the maximum knowledge that's available on the earth. They forget something very important, that there is another knowledge, which is the knowledge that's coming from Almighty Allah, which is the most authentic because He's the most trustworthy and He is the perfect. Unlike the Muslims all the time, Muslims take all the time option number one. And the reason for that, because it's a divine option, and they have tested it, and they have seen it in their own life, and they have read it in the history and the biography of all the messengers and the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they are quite sure, 100% sure, that all the time option number one is the one that's done by them. And the Quran tells us that whenever a Muslim or a Muslimah confronts a situation where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a decree, and that's what we mean here or refer to by option number one all the time. This is the option that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected. It's a decree from Almighty Allah. So a Muslim or a Muslimah, a male or female, has no other option except to select that option and to follow it and to obey it. When we signed this contract with Almighty Allah by saying, and every day we review it by saying La ilaha illallah, we all the time remind ourselves that we have no other option. The options are in front of us, but we know our choice. We know the choice that every Muslim will take is this choice, is the choice of option number one, because it is divine option. We would never ever, and a Muslim has to train himself or to train herself that all the time we avoid completely taking option number two, because this option number two is a non-divine, is a human option. It's based on weak knowledge, because as we know that this knowledge changes. It didn't happen at that time that the flood would cover, but it happened at the time of Nuh. Before the time of Nuh, it didn't happen. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Nuh alayhi salam that it will happen. And Nuh alayhi salam trusted Almighty Allah. And we Muslims trust Almighty Allah. And then after that, we've seen many situations similar to this, even a situation like tsunami that happened this year in 2011. Yes, and we've witnessed the effect of it on Japan that swept villages and small cities because of the huge flood that was caused by the tsunami. We've seen it now. Our experience tells us that it is there, and we've seen it, and research even says, whether it will happen or not, that in the coming few years there will be another tsunami in the Mediterranean Sea. Therefore, I'm reminding you, whenever we confront these options, even if we find research is saying that, the collective experience of a human being is saying that, the personal experience is saying that, our intellect is saying that, still there is something better than our intellect. It's something that's the creator of our intellect, the creator of the human beings, the creator of the rain, the creator of the flood, the creator of everything. He's the one who tells us option number one. And that's why we Muslims have no other choices, because we submitted to Allah. We made a promise to Allah that we are going to select all the time option number one. Brothers and sisters, it is our job to remind each other that whenever there is a decree from Almighty Allah, we don't select. The best way to use our brains and our intellect correctly is to select option number one, the divine option. Finally, I would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all the time follow and select this option, because it saves us not only in this life, but it saves us in later life. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is your presenter, Mamdouh Nuruddin Muhammad.
In this world today, there are many ways to fall from grace and to go astray. We should realize that in our lives we can make a change.